Now it's being recorded. Yeah.
Yes, I sent it.
Um, and yeah, I'll just do a short introduction of your practice. So you're a um, mixed media practice that explores belonging, migration, and resilience um, through installation, photography. Um, you explore these themes, and yeah, you've recently graduated here from RCA. You're from Miami, um, and you kind of been, on the West Coast, right, in LA, and as well from growing up in Miami, right? Uh,
Yes.
and yeah, so how would you think? Would you say that's an accurate kind of uh, description of your practice? How would you describe your practice um, from your point of view?
I believe that that is an accurate description of my practice. And describing my practice myself, I will say that it does evolve. It centers around a lot about my culture and my upbringing, being an African American woman as well. And there's just a lot behind that, in that, and with the history, as we know of. And a lot of my work just comes through celebrating that, and more so the things that we normally have seen through history and the things that we have been through. I like to take this otherworldly element that I see that exists within Black culture through references I've seen in Afrofuturists and musicians and other artists as well. And I like to incorporate that in my practice to kind of reimagine the culture and the way that things could be surrounding themes in the cultural. And I use that to inform my visual language. So there's a lot of research, a lot of thoughts, a lot of lived experiences that go into building my practice before I even start making an art piece. But those different experiences between living on the West Coast, growing up in a place like Miami, which is so culturally diverse, not
Yeah.
just for African Americans, but as well as Caribbean immigrants as well, and the blending of those cultures and what that looks like, very much so informed like the work that I create.
Yeah, so I guess it's like the act of like world building. I see you use the word world building a lot in your
Yeah.
practice, where you're using techniques, image making processes, found objects um, as like a form of engagement or to kind of activate like these like worlds that you're building.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I've seen it a lot in uh I was gonna start with There's No Beach in My Hood, but
Mm-hmm.
I've seen like the world building, especially in your final degree year project, where you developed like you created a like a set, um
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I forgot what the name of the actual that's the crib. That was
That's the
called the
correct.
crib. Yeah.
Yeah.
One sec, the lights have just turned off. So one sec, the lights have just turned off, so I'm gonna do my phone.
Pausing.
Um, yeah, so I've seen that you used like the process of world building in the crib, in your final degree or project. Yeah, so would love to hear more about that project. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, the ways you kind of built the set. Because you use photography, found objects, installation, and these sorts of kind of yeah, processes in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that project is kind of like a culmination. But like I spoke to you before, when it comes to projects like my earlier works with the There's a Beach in My Hood and like My Ghetto, before I started my RCA career, basically, a lot of my works had this kind of abstract Afrofuturist element into them, but I would use the figures that I was using as my muses and being portrayed in kind of normal everyday settings. It kind of gave this like semblance that it was like a fragment of this like new future that I had been building, like the world that I've been anticipating to build. It was kind of giving like a hint towards those, but I wasn't like necessarily building installation based works yet. I was kind of like more so designing hair and doing photography and videography as well to like build my art pieces. And then
Yeah.
when I got to RCA, I had this idea early on that I was creating this universe I called Universe 7, which I more so reference as like the free Black planet. And my
Okay.
whole idea originally was to build a world off of that, and that's what the world was going to be. And it just would involve so many different things. But then when I started building that, I started thinking about more ideas. A lot of the ideas and thoughts that I had come about is what that stemmed from. And when it came to when I was thinking about what to do for the degree show, I
Yeah.
had just a bunch of, that's why I say a part of my practice comes through like the research to live experiences and things that helped me build my artworks, because a lot of it just like kind of fell together. I started off with that concept, and then there will be things that happened like Ransom, she's another design student at RCA. She had the concept for building the furniture pieces that were included in my grad show installation. And that was something that came way before I had the thought or idea. So I wanted to include those pieces within the show with the space that RCA had given me. And
Yeah.
when I was sitting and thinking, how can I transform the space? Because, we showcase in our studios, there it looks completely different. And I just wasn't for like the idea of the space and how it was originally. I thought and had the idea to transform the space in that manner. And because I had the furniture pieces with Ransom and the idea for the portraits as well too, that kind of gave me the idea of this kind of living room installation based thing that I wanted to build. And a lot of those ideas stem from like this feeling of belonging and a sense of home. And the crib was kind of my like first real like major step out into building and diving into like installation based work. And I felt it was just important for it to be that, to be the symbol and to be the figure, because the home holds a lot of memories, pictures, thoughts, ideas, um, items, and things as well too. And I wanted to use that as a catalyst for a space. So the whole idea behind the crib is it exists in this free Black planet world that I had been building all year at RCA, but it's kind of like this subconscious realm that basically holds like the memories of cultures and the histories and the things that we have been through whilst building new futures and ideas as well too. So that's kind of like the idea and the process behind that installation and how it came to be.
I guess like the home is like when you go into people's houses and homes, it's kind of a reflection of self. It's a reflection of uh where you feel most comfortable,
Mhm.
and how you want to live, right? And it's also like a way of kind of you know, what you envision the best way of life to live, and that kind of goes aligned with with the free Black planet um kind of methodology. Um
Mhm.
yeah, so would you say like that installation was like like an intersection of a lot of what you've been exploring throughout the year? Because I've seen like you use the tin type um like in like photography
Mhm.
process um in that installation, but you also used it um in your portrait series, in your
Mhm.
yeah, your portrait series. Is this like a way of is you described as a way of reclamation, um
Mhm.
and and a way of engaging with the body, um and the people that you're photographing. Um yeah, so what is like your relationship with the process and like reclamation um in like using these processes like tintype. Um,
Yeah, so there's so many moving parts into the work that I do. And a lot of it are things that I like thought upon. Like tintyping was something that I have really been wanting to learn for a long time, but I just never had the space or like the opportunity to be able to do it pre RCA. And when I came down to grad show and thinking about like the way that I wanted to include the portraits inside of the space, the idea was something that I revisited, wanting to learn, and that's how that came to be. But a lot of the different things that I've included in the space are things that I just actually lived and like experienced. So the usage of records, obviously, like this call is happening at home, and this has been my wall like the whole entire time. But I've been collecting vinyl since 2020, 2019, 2020. And it's just something that I would just do like on my own time. I didn't think about it in like an art context. It was just for like the love of it. But it's something about all of these different things, like the way that they would do cover art, the way that vinyls were even used and portrayed in a time like the 70s when it was the most common and popular. There was like this real uprise of like Afrofuturism and Black thought,
Mhm.
in the industry at the time, which is what really sparked a lot of the interest and ideas that I have. So through those like different thoughts and ideas is what really stemmed from a lot of the things that I wanted to do surrounding this theme of like reclamation. And we hear a lot about like the egregiousness of the history being Black on a regular basis, but I was really drawn towards the idea of a lot of the other artists that I've seen come before me dive into this method of um, futurism, like Lauren Halsey or George Clinton. And it's just like this like opportunity to be able to like reimagine things and place them in a different context. And tintyping was so important for me to do in that context because of the simple fact that it's a process that came from the 19th century. So back then during the 1800s, we know during that time for Black bodies in the Western world, it was mostly stemming around slavery or kind of assimilation, basically, when it came to being photographed in that way. So I really wanted to use that process as my method and use the authentic process as my method for those portraits. Because when people looked at them and when they experienced the space and they came for grad show, nobody could actually really tell what time period they came from. So a lot of the way that I wrote things, the way that I portrayed things, even down to like the idea and concept behind portraits and extending it into the space to make my installation interactive and to take those Polaroids that I took of everyone who visited the space at the time, the
Yeah.
way that I like captured people in the space, you couldn't see around that it was going to be like, oh, this is a set. My whole concept behind building artwork is not necessarily something that's going to live for galleries to be able to see. My whole thought process behind building artwork is the idea that if it's thousands of years in the future and all we have left are these archival pieces and these archival moments, and people discover those tintype portraits or they discover those Polaroids from my graduate showcase and see everybody within the space, they wouldn't think, oh, this is from an art gallery or this is from a show, this is fake. They would think that it's actually historical, and people way in the future who may look like us or whatnot, they will form their own new ideas and societies based off of the things that they're seeing instead of like seeing the things that we know of real life, like these depictions and these cultural narratives that we've seen stem before. They'll start to see it in more of like a regal manner, a manner that's more culturally accurate to who we are as a people
Yeah.
than what we have known to be. So a lot of my artwork is kind of forms around activism in that way to like rebuild and reshape the world. Granted, I would like to definitely be successful in my approach, just because of the way that everything is set up. But a lot of my inspiration and my ideas behind creating this work is outside of myself to basically like find new ways to reshape the future. And any method I use and incorporate into that, whether that be through um, incorporating found items and things like records or using things like tintype photography or hair and braiding as a technology are all things that I would basically use to do that as a catalyst. Like the writings and the research and everything that I include in my work it's all to fall under this idea of reclamation and being able to like reimagine the future.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's like I don't know if you're familiar with it's there's this artist called Adam Davis. He's from LA. Um
Yes, and does he do tintype as well too?
in
He
type
was
as
the
well.
first person I saw, yeah, do it as a Black person. Yeah.
It's very similar to what you just said. He's trying to develop like a physical archive. Um and his goal is to reach 20,000 like tintype photographs of like people in his community. Um for that exact reason, to kind of have a living archive, um, and also as like that process of reclamation. But it's really it's very much like a community like building uh, exercise as well, right? Like for this archive to exist, um, you need to work with the people around you and your friends and so on. And like just like in your project where I know that Gaia did the backdrop, and then
Hmm.
you had like Xavier in the front as like the model, right? And then you
It
were
was
taking,
random for that one, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And it's it really is like a true collaboration to realize that kind of thing, right? Um
Mhm.
and yeah, I wanted to like learn more about your relationship with like collaboration, because the through line between a lot of your projects I've seen, you're working with a friend, you're working with like your cousin, your baby cousin.
Yeah.
Well, like in there's no beach in my hood. There's a beach in my hood, where you're working with your cousin, your in your grandmother's.
To
Um,
the aunt's house, yeah. And then the there's a beach in my hood was my really good friends that I've known since like high school, and we just had like a beach day that day, and I was snapping pictures of them. That's
yeah,
where those came from.
yeah, and that was really my entry point into your practice, because I felt like uh, that work was very just very candid and very just honest. Um, and there was like a sense of I've never been to that community, but there was a sense of familiarity. And that's kind of goes into like this universal Black experience, right? Like, I haven't really been to Fort Lauderdale properly. Um, I'm more like on the East Coast, what's more on the East Coast side, but there's still a sense of familiarity with those spaces, which is interesting, you know? Um, and yeah, so so is collaboration a central, would you say it's a central part of your practice, or yeah,
Yes, time collaboration. I can't, because I'm not like a painter necessarily, or like like I don't draw. My practice deeply involves like collaboration. I think that the ideas that I have, I couldn't necessarily pull off without other people. And a lot of the times I come forth, I start my work with like research and like ideas and experiences. And then I find ways to like write about that, rewrite them. And then when I rewrite them and have these like different documents that I have been uh, putting together, I start to think of like ideas and concepts of the way that I would want to like work with muses and for them to be portrayed. But I couldn't pull off these projects without my collaborators. And I just think that it's a good thing to be able to use within these projects. Like I could create like a painting, or I could make a sculpture, and I could not include using people like physically within these spaces. But I think that it just further like extends the conversation behind reclamation. It's like using actual living, breathing bodies as these and as the subjects within these projects. It's people who actually, even though the concepts are kind of like a little bit figurative, a little bit abstract sometimes, it makes it real. Like when people, like I was talking to my mom about this when I first started making work, because I was like, I'm world building, but it's not real. And she was like, when you use people, when you work with people, when you create these hairstyles on them, when you picture them, and when you make work and you put it out there, it basically makes it its own world because it exists. So now it is real because you made it real, basically. And that's why I feel like working with people is really important and integral to my visual language. But it's even more important because I feel like I came from, that's where LA kind of steps into like my an inspiration behind my practice, because I started building my artwork in this form when I was in LA, not when I was in Miami. In Miami, I was still dancing. So being in a place like LA and being in the entertainment industry as a performer, everything that you do is stems from collaboration. Like you're working on a video set, there's 500 people working on one thing, and you have to trust everybody around you to come together to be able to make a project happen. And that's something that I always thought was super beautiful. And I understand that I am the artist and I am the catalyst for these ideas. But um, I couldn't, like the whole situation with Ransom being my collaborator for the furniture. I tell her that that concept for grad show installation would have never came to be if she didn't push me to build furniture and have the concept of using my visual language to be a part of her design pieces. And collaboration in that way is more important for me when I'm trying to build something bigger than myself, especially with other Black creatives, because I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the ideas. I have a few, and I think that they're really great. But there's a lot more that the people that I collaborate with add into my ideas that makes me think about something else, that makes me develop my ideas further. So collaboration is probably like the biggest part that has shaped my ideas to be what they are today.
Yeah. And just working with I guess it's easier. It's also working with friends too, right? Like um it makes it there's you're able to really translate your idea um
Mm.
easy like easier in working with family and friends and in a familiar space as well. But I guess also is like, as you said, like coming from like the performance background, like collaboration is really like just like almost natural. It's like very like a natural approach to making work, because I'm like on the other side of the coin where like I'm painting and I see painting as um like uh like an isolated thing where I just want to paint my thing by myself. But collaboratively after the painting, you talk with people and then you go back and then revisit the idea. Um, so I guess really it's interesting because it's two different backgrounds and two different like kind of approaches to work. Um, but yeah, yeah. So how do you think like going forward now that like you're on the way out into like the world post RCA, what kind of work do you think your work will change in terms of um like uh like the type of outputs, where it's going to be performance or are you going to continue kind of like a series like the tin type series? The lights turned off again, but we'll leave it. um
I can see you.
can you see me? Oh,
Yes, we can see you.
okay. um yeah, so how do you think your work is going to evolve, kind of as you're kind of out of the institution and um traveling and moving around a bit more, and because like from my perspective, like you when you graduate, the work changes a lot because you're in different situations, and um your interest might change towards writing or curation or this sort of thing. Are you going to continue building kind of like the free Black planet, or how do you feel you're going to move forward?
Yeah, I feel like the work is not done. I feel like it takes a lot to build a world. And it's something that I'm so passionate about, not just because of the fact that it's cool creatively, but because of the fact that I am really passionate about activism and reclamation and reclaiming histories as well too, and like building those futures for people to come after me to be able to visualize life in a different manner. It takes a lot of work, and I feel like the installation I did for grad show with the crib was my first time actually really building an installation and building a world for the first time, because before that installation everything was like fragments of this idea that I'm creating. And now that I did that for grad show, that was like the first time I got to actually really build the space. And I was very fond of that concept. So now that that's happened, I feel like I'm going to continue to keep expanding on that after graduation to like build more spaces as
I
well.
could imagine that work like scaled up, you know? Because
Yeah.
I find like when we're here, you're given a certain you're given a certain amount of space and resources and etc. And you're working at these like smaller scales. Like that work specifically, I can imagine it like in a really like scaled up in a beautiful like space and you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I plan on wanting to continue it that way and like build even more spaces. So right now there's like even in the works working on, hopefully everything goes to pass smoothly,
Yeah.
but I'm like working towards like my Miami show for January,
Yeah.
and that concept, the girl who's curating it and brought me in, she wanted me to do my installation from grad show, and I was like, impossible, you know, that work won't be available and it's all the way in Europe, so that would be too much to ship back and forth and things. So I was like, the concept she gave me, I was like having some ideas surrounding them because it was different things culturally, like hair, nails, shirts, grills, things that encapsulated Black culture. But she didn't necessarily have like a concept yet. And I was like, well, since it's just me, I'm the only artist, I can build an entire space like I did for grad show, but with the entire space that we're going to be having for the show. So I came up with this concept of like a flea market. And in Miami, we had this like huge flea market. It was like USA Flea, and it was really popular. Like if you were from there, you know of this place. But they tore it down eventually. But it used to be this like really place that we would grow up going to. It was like this source of like culture that you can go. Like my dad would go get his haircut from there. Like somebody's doing hair on like the side, anything that you needed that stems from all of those different themes that she wanted to include in the show existed in that place, in that flea. And it's so funny because a part of that flea market as well had a checkerboard floor within it, just like I did for grad show, but the checkerboard was like red, white, and blue. So I'm like basically finding a way to rebuild that space, but like kind of conceptually, like I did for grad show. So it's not going to be an exact like a flea market space or like a replica, but like more of like an artistic and creative like expression of that space, and to be able to bring it to and include it in a community like Miami after the building was completely tore down, and like there's no remnants of it even existing. It's only existing if you like remember and you know of the space. That's a concept that I'm basically like bringing back to pay like homage and to be able to like archive that space and make it live forever, but in a way that's a more creative and accurate depiction of what I imagine the space to be. So I see after grad show with this happening and amongst other things that are coming up, that I will continue to want to like build spaces like that. And I like that work, and I like that concept of building, because if I got the space to do a show like the Miami show or my grad show installation, I could do an entire building process, but also in other aspects, I can take pieces of those works and put them in like a smaller scale, or I can scale it up even more. But whatever that happens, well, however that comes to be, I plan on continuing to do work like that, and just putting all the different pieces together. And that stems with photography, film, writing, sculpting, found items and stuff as well too. And I think that'll continue for now. Who knows? My
Yeah.
mind goes places all the time. So, you know, I could be doing something completely different in the next few months. But right
Would you
now, I think that's where I am.
would you incorporate performance? Like would you kind of revisit performance and back into your work?
Yeah, everybody wants to know the answer to that question because I have, obviously, everybody knows that I like dance professionally for a long time, over a decade, and then I started my fine art journey. So it's like both of them never existed in the same context, or at least not quite often. I haven't done anything set in stone with the two yet. But I think when somebody asked me before, I just said that I currently didn't have like an idea of how to merge the two together. And a lot of my work and the things that I create stems from organically, intuitively stumbling upon ideas and finding ways to incorporate them into it. And the only way that that can happen, I feel, for me personally, is through my lived experiences and going out here and putting things together to be able to like formulate my ideas as one. So I want to be able to incorporate my performance into my fine artwork right now, but I have not stumbled upon something that feels organic, like this
See,
makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense to me and I don't know where to put it in context, I kind of just like sit on the idea until like it makes sense. But I feel like my dance career as a performer is longer than my fine art career. So I'm more comfortable in that realm to just be like, all right, I had that, I can sit on that. But right now I'm developing this and I have developed a lot, but I feel like when I have gotten to a place of exploration in that part, that it will come to me. But I just don't think that it has come to me in a way that I feel confident about it just yet. But maybe soon, yeah, we'll see what happens.
you're not in a rush. There's no rush.
Rush at all, not to get back to that world yet, but
Yeah.
hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a whole different. It's so performance is fine art, but um it exists in a really different side of art, which is interesting, right? Um, kind of like the kind of the gallery kind of situation. Performance has always been a medium that's like been like underrepresented in a way. You know, it's been slept on, I think,
Mhm.
personally. Um, but yeah, I would like, yeah, when you're ready, we would love to see it, you know. I feel like that would be like natural. But I like that. I like that idea of that you need a rationale and lived experience before you actually like make work. And I guess it's very spiritual in a way. Um, it's a very spiritual approach to our practice. Um, so yeah, so would you say like spirituality um, is very central to your practice as well? Um, well, but from what I'm hearing, this is what I'm kind of getting. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm gonna get all witchy on the chats. Y'all not gonna stop me on here.
Yeah,
But if
yeah,
I had to say,
yeah.
but yes, I feel like it is a big part of my practice. Like spirituality, obviously I include things like the Florida water and stuff like that, and like
Like
kind
what?
of Florida water. So it's like it's kind of like the so like almost like equivalent to holy water, but it's used for like cleansing spaces like that and spiritual practices as well. Um, and it involves my practice a lot because I feel like spirituality and just like that divine nature is something that just lives in the world already and exists outside of like my creative practice. But creativity and art is like one thing, but art is like to me, it's close to like giving birth because it's the power of creation and what the power of creation has the ability to do out in the world. Like there's been artists who have created these things, like Solange being like a big inspiration musically in all of her projects. She created something that had this like kind of futurist element to it in a project, and that stemmed me creating all this artwork that I made like through an inspiration. as an inspiration. So creativity in that realm is very powerful because her influence has influenced somebody else to influence someone else to create things that now we're seeing like a difference in trends and culture, the way people move, the way people think, the way people speak.
Inherited, right? Like all these things that we do
Mm-hmm.
are inherited, you know?
Yeah.
And um yeah, like people have been making work for generations and generations, and the people who aren't even born yet will make work as well. So
Mm-hmm.
this idea of like inheritance in art is interesting as well.
Yeah,
Um,
really the part behind it that makes it super spiritual, whether you want it to be or not. Because like when I come up with a lot of the ideas that I have, that's why I said it's lived experiences are important to me because I started collecting vinyls in 2019 for no reason in particular, but then somehow that informed another interest that informed another interest that ended up being created in the space in the future. And there's no way intuitively you can have all of these things happen, in my opinion, without there being some level of divinity behind it, because there'll be chances, it'll be like happenstance that I just stumbled upon this concept or I ended up in this space like by chance. Not necessarily maybe where I was supposed to be on the trajectory wise, but somehow something happened that pivoted me this way, and then now I'm here. But I couldn't have those experiences unless it was spiritual, unless it was divine, and it was just not by chance, but you know what I mean in that concept. So spirituality and those practices um, are heavily involved in the way that I think about my work and the way that I portray my work as well, because I feel like I have to pay respect to it because it couldn't be without it, you know?
yeah, yeah, I feel that. I feel that. Um, should we let's see. I'm trying to figure out if we can kind of in like have questions. Um, maybe we can do it uh like a Q&A situation. If I can figure out the technical
There's like a little Q&A button down here with it says it at the bottom of the Zoom. I see Emily had asked a question before, so I guess the people who are watching have access to that as well too.
okay. Okay, if anyone would like to ask a question, feel free to type it in to the Q&A bit, or I guess the chat bit, and then we'll see it. Uh, where should we see it?
It says like a Q&A at the bottom here.
I see
So
it.
if
Yeah.
you click that button, yeah.
Okay. Um, it's so funny to be on the other side of like these kind of conversations um where you're actually having the conversation, because when people ask, oh, can you ask a question, it suddenly goes quiet.
Yeah.
um yeah, yeah, I see it's quiet here, but okay. Is there anything else you would like to talk about, or like touch on? Because like um it'll be a good opportunity to hear about whatever you're thinking. Um, you can let me know. No?
I feel like, oh, there's so many things that could be touched on, like when it comes to like my work and my practice. There's just a lot that goes into it as well too. I feel like the important thing to note is that like art practitioner is like a big thing um on the way that I create stuff as well too, but also uh, I kind of see myself as like an archivist, like a historian, like an activist as well. And I think art is just like a something that stems from all of those ideas. But some people also somebody put a question in the chat.
Hey,
Two people there, Emily.
okay, we'll start with Emily's question. So you can see it on your side as well, right?
Yes.
So the question is the idea of oral history. So the idea of oral history is very powerful. Could you speak more on that from both of your perspectives? Um, like the importance of oral history in archival research. I think it's the when you have a conversation with someone, it's the probably the deepest way of understanding somebody's thinking or how somebody is thinking. Um, the first thing, you know, the thing is, the first thing I do when I find like an artist or I'm researching something is go on YouTube and look at like if there's conversations or if there's podcasts or some uh kind of oral history that exists. Uh, that's like the natural uh response, like natural thing that I do. Because I feel like you really get a sense of emotion as well when you listen to conversations, and um it gives you more information, I feel. Um uh and on the emotional level than for me personally than like image or text. And then when you listen to the conversations and you go back and look at the text and the image in relation to each other, um, it's very powerful, I think. Um,
I
and
agree. I feel
uh,
like it's a kind of a little bit of a mix of both is really important to me. Honestly, I wouldn't rule out either one because I
yeah,
feel like sometimes you can't find oral histories on certain things or with certain people as well too. So I kind of there's a lot of written documents and text that I have in my work as well too. I don't have them published because I usually use the text that I write in relation to the histories and ideas that I'm creating in my actual installation. So it's one of those things I want people to be able to experience when they visit my artwork. But between the two, I feel like are very important, especially within our community, because um, and it's just how people stay informed necessarily with uh, being able to like formulate their own ideas, like we spoke of before, and be able to shape new things for the future. And I
yeah,
think oral histories is just like, especially within our community, are a big form of that right now because most of us do. Yeah, we go to like YouTube first, we scroll on social media, we look up interviews and conversations if we have the privilege to be able to do so. And it's also better so that you could actually, like you said, get an idea of like the person's thought process, their inflection in their tone, like their passion and their ideas. So I enjoy it, but a lot of the times it can be a little bit fleeting sometimes too, depending. Like certain things may, God forbid, could get lost, or the internet, something can crash on us. So the balance between both of having oral, visual, and written histories are really important to me as well.
yeah, yeah, I agree. It also makes me think about how for some reason my brain went to how we like archive in our own practice, you know, and how we kind of um just to put yourself on the other side, how people would be able to access your work um in 20 or 30 years, and having the oral history, the physical, and as you said, like the written history as well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and like getting into the practice of like seriously archiving your work, like in your own practice. Because like, for example, before this conversation, I was looking at like one of my favorite artists, Donald Judd. Um, and he's just New York sculptor, and he has the Judd Foundation where he has the estate of all of his written works, his physical spaces, and he's really developed like a real infrastructure around like the archival element of his work. And he's passed away, but he still has so much engagement um with the current right now what's happening because of this kind of practice of archiving that he practiced, that he put in years ago, So you're able to kind of live through your work as you kind of, go. Um, yeah, it's interesting.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely agree. You have to have those put in place so that people can know for the future. There's so many histories and things that have already been put in place for us that we
Yeah.
can look to, and even states and places like Florida right now, where I'm from, they're banning actually Black books by Black authors and teaching Black history in schools. So, and also I went to the library when I was there, Miami-Dade County Library, when I was back home for some time, and like the books were so dated and the concepts behind the books were extremely dated. And I was even asking like the librarian, like, do you have books on like Black authors, Black artists, or is everything going to be about slavery and what that was entailing? And she was like, we're trying to get it in, but we really can't. So like when I was growing up, there were a lot of things I just didn't know about, like until I got out and I was able to explore new spaces and new places. And I would be in college by that point before I even got the chance to
Yeah.
explore that. Luckily, things came early on. I'm still kind of young, so I got the chance to, but there would just be a lot that even my family, when I talk to my fans and family, that people still are unaware of until somebody else puts it in place and gives people the tools and the knowledge and the access to be able to like learn about certain things. It doesn't exist. So that part where Emily said, especially within our communities, that's why those methods of archiving histories in different forms are so important, because there's no way that you'll ever be informed about what's going on or what could be if you don't have access to those things in these spaces. So that's why it's really important to me as well.
It's so important, especially like going on these times, but accessibility, like actually being able to go to the library and borrow like a Arthur Jaffa book, like imagine being 14, coming across a Virgil or Arthur Jaffa like book that might change your whole trajectory and change your whole kind of way of seeing or thinking or how
Yeah.
because you're seeing people that look like do things that you didn't know that you could do,
Yeah,
um,
it gives you a good idea of
accessibility.
like what can be done as well too. Like,
Yeah.
uh, and until that happens, you never really know. And I think that's the part about it that it makes it really vital and important to have those in these spaces.
Yeah, it's so important. Okay. Um, let's go to the second question. Talia, um, what is the importance of the use of found objects in your work? Um, what do you think is the reason why so many Black artists are using found objects? Like, for example, David Hammons, BET Sir, Noah Puriful. I don't know Noah Puriful. I'm gonna write these down actually.
Study
But
so far.
yeah, so what's your relationship with found objects and why do you think this is happening in lots of Black artists' work as well? Yep.
Hello? Okay, we're still on. It's a
Yeah.
big part of my practice. I feel like found objects is because really, like, there's this idea that I talked about before when it comes to world building. It's this idea that if you were to find it 1,000 years in the future, not after I'm dead and gone 50 years plus, in a gallery, but more so way further on, everything will exist kind of like as remnants, as pieces, as like figures. And that's kind of how I feel about the ready made objects that I use within my practice as well. They're kind of like these moments in history and time that, just as much as my portraits and as much as my pieces of like furniture, different things like that, like the actual artworks, they're just as important in the inclusion of like these spaces that I'm building for that particular purpose as well, because they kind of like basically inform the work and support the practice mostly. So that's why I like including them a lot, like things like vinyls or stuff, because it kind of further helps you understand the ideas and concepts towards like the reasons why I'm creating the work in the way that I am. So that's why I like to include them as well. I think that a lot of other Black artists, like David Hammons being mentioned, that's something that I feel like they think about as well too when it comes to including ready-made objects inside of their work. It's like you take these pieces, but then you find ways to like change them and transition them because they're part of like the history and the ideas and the concepts just as much as like your own artwork as well. And I think that's what artists like myself and others like basically respect about that because it's like not necessarily trying to like regurgitate anybody else's ideas or steal their concepts or things like that more so than pay respect to them and find ways to like remix them in my own special way as well too. But the ready-made objects that I do use, whether that be from hair products to vinyls to Florida water, are all things that I found and picked up along the journey of building my art practice. And they're kind of like it's definitely like a feeling of paying homage to them. If I'm building a new world and I'm creating that world, it's going to include new images, new written text, um, and new pieces, new artworks as well. But it's also going to include things that I feel like should transition from this world to the next. So it's like all the best parts, and maybe sometimes not the best parts if it feels like it needs to be included in the work for context or reasons or purposes. But I think that's my personal thought process behind including ready-made objects. It's like, all right, well, I'm going to the new world and I'm building the free black planet. We can't leave the vinyls behind. You know, we can't leave the Florida water. It all has to come along with that. So
Yeah.
that's the importance behind using found objects in my work because they hold their own significance.
Yeah, I guess there's like a ethnographic quality to like these materials that we use, you know, and like historically, um, it's like a lens into like a social political situation, you know, just through uh a ready-made material, you know.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, when I think about it, there is like a deep history of found objects and black artists, and like a consistent history as well, um, between the young and the old, you know. Um, yeah, yeah, quite
Like
cool.
a lot of times that is it probably if I had to speculate, you know, why that could be such like a big thing because until she pointed it out, I never really thought, you know, why the black artists use found objects so much, especially like black American artists. But I feel like a lot of it has to do with the fact of like these items and things that have happened and already have been created and existed. Um, they have come before us and come before the work and they have already had their own narratives and stipulations put upon them based off of like what we know history to be. So a lot of the times when I feel like any artist is using ready-made objects, especially black artists in that context, it all like has a stemming of like reclamation or probably kind of challenging certain ideas and narratives that have come before us, and these ready-made items are just kind of like a catalyst creatively to be able to like display these ideas.
Yeah. And I guess also element of necessity and resources as well is an element of like the use of found objects. Like if you need to make work and you have like historically limited resources, um, the ready-made object and like the found object is a way you can kind of continue making work and reclaim things and speak about the kind of like just the black existence and sort of thing. And you do see that a lot in like David Hammond's work. And you see that a lot in like Theaster Gates' work as well, with like the roofing paintings and things that you can literally find off of the street. Um, but it's just assembled in a way um, where it could exist in, you know, the fine art space or tell us certain type of story. Um, so I guess
Yeah,
there's the relationship between necessity, resources, and yeah, yeah,
it's a big part of it. It gives it new life, and I feel like it does make things a lot easier because you know if we had like a Tavares's budget and you know we could build new worlds from scratch, you know, that would be a possibility and be a thing. but then also sometimes to resource and access plays a big part of it as well, because there's already so many moving parts to building work, especially larger scale works, that you might as well just kind of like build off of an idea and a concept that already existed. But it kind of works hand in hand in these ideas of reclamation, because yeah, you're using these ready-made objects because of accessibility and resources, but then also they hold their own significance as well. So it kind of works, yeah.
Okay. Patrick, um, thoroughly thoroughly enjoyed listening to you both. What are your thoughts of the UK versus US art scene? Could you speak of cultural similarities or differences in the scene? That's an interesting question. I think about that a lot. What do you think? Like from
Oh,
from
goodness. As far as like I feel like between, if we're just talking about starting off with just talking about like the art scene between the two places, just generally, I feel like the UK and Europe as a whole has a lot more opportunities for emerging to mid-career artists to be able to develop themselves and to be able to have the spaces, opportunities, studios, residencies, shows, exhibitions, and everything, grant funding, to be able to continue to create work, and that is really beneficial. Now, what I'm seeing as I'm transitioning into, I'm going to be spending some time back in the US building artwork. The accessibility is a little bit different depending on where you are, but at the same time, in a lot of cities and different places in the US, they're not as supportive to the arts unless you're at a certain point of your career. It's a little bit more difficult to have the space and opportunities to be able to make work. Like, I think starting off here as a fine artist and attending RCA kind of has me spoiled a little bit. And now I'm going back to the US and going to a place like Miami, and my friends who are artists are like, oh, they cut the art budget in half. The city cut the art budget in half. So like if you're trying to find a studio, good luck and things like whatever. I'm like, oh, okay, so it's very drastically different as far as like accessibilities for artists depending on what part of their career they're in. As far as like I'm wondering if like the second part is like, could you speak of the cultural similarities or differences? um I guess there's more so like the differences, but the similarities is just, both westernized, to both westernized countries as well too. So they have their like similarities as far as like the kind of art that they like to portray and like the spaces that you could possibly be in.
Yeah.
But the accessibility to those things is going to be drastically different depending on what part of your career you're in those spaces,
Yeah.
especially for Black artists as well too.
Yeah. I think I was talking about this with a friend the other day. I feel like right now in London, like being a young artist in London, there is like a program or a gallery or a space for you. Like there's been so many exciting like young programs and galleries that have been popping up literally every other month, that are being run by like very, forward thinking people, that I feel like in London, this is like right now, this is a good time in London. And then on the flip side, I'm seeing like in New York, like I haven't been to New York in a few years, but so this my experience is through Instagram, you
Mhm.
know. But I'm seeing a lot of like really interesting programs as well. Like a lot of I realize a lot in New York, there's a lot of female run uh uh like Black galleries um in New York. There's been like a shift, a culture, like a cultural shift that's happened in New York recently with like 52 Walker, like Hannah Troy, um, and Nicola Vassal, etc. So there is like something happening in New York, I feel, as well. Um, uh, Yeah, I personally don't know too much about the scene of New York. I would have to genuinely, I would have to go there and hang out and see what's going on, you know?
Yeah, I
So
feel like New York
yeah,
is probably the best bet though in the US when it comes to keeping a certain level of like the community that we are so blessed to have here right now in London. Like there's always something going on here and like uh even outside of like RCA because of all the opportunities going on here. Like when you graduate, the sense of community artistically still exists. I feel like New York is probably the better bet in the US to be able to continue to have that because New York is kind of like London in that way as well too, like the American version. But
yeah.
any other places, any other states, it might look a little different and be a little bit more difficult for accessibility in art.
So it's interesting how when I read the question, I see UK as London and US as New York, you know? Like
Yeah, might as if you talk about art, it might as well be those two
yeah,
places. And
yeah,
you go anywhere else, things get a little bit questionable. But they're like the hubs, so they hold a lot of like the good opportunities that people are looking for.
yeah, yeah. I need to get out there and just for like a month and just acclimate myself. 'Cause I've seen a lot of interesting like experimental like interesting work happening in New York, and I've seen lots of London artists show in New York as well. So like there is like an exchange and like a special relationship between the cities, you know?
Yeah, I need to spend some more time out there too. I like briefly lived in New York for some periods, but when I was younger, because my mom lived there, I hadn't really gotten a chance to explore their art scene in great depth.
Yeah.
But I do see a lot of great things based off of like my friends who are there and other artists as well too. So yeah, that is also something I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. I guess you don't want to just to end it like you don't who wants to be like a provincial artist, you know? Like you want to be able to kind of move across different places and show work in different places and engage with different like people as well. So like half of being in not half of it, but a lot of being in art is like going to the places and hanging out and participating. You have to go there and participate and see what's going on. Uh, so when you're in Miami, I might pop out there. Uh,
Because Marco is coming up, so everybody's gonna be there, and
yeah,
that's gonna be a big time for Miami. And this will be my first Basel year or getting to attend Art Basel and seeing what that's like. So yes, everybody get a chance to. I highly recommend. Miami is a great place, but yeah, the art scene is a little bit different than what people may be used to here, but still a lot of great things that I feel like even outside of like we just talking about like the art scene between the two places, like those parts about it are great and they provide a lot of room and space for opportunity. But when you're visiting a lot of these places, like even with me getting to experience a place like London and the demographic is not what I'm used to with like being African American, such a very specific experience. People are on the other side of the spectrum. Mostly everybody's either African or they're Afro Caribbean. So it's not the same for me, but like even like being in a space like this, RCA and being in the art world gave me a lot of opportunities for experiences. But talking to people, trying getting involved in other cultures outside of my own, learning about people's experiences and perspectives are a big part of what speaks to the art scene and gives a lot of inspiration. So going and visiting these places, it's if you do ever decide to like traverse and go to somewhere like the US and experience the different scenes in other cities, being whether that's New York, Miami, LA, Texas, or anything. I say a part of it is like, yeah, you focus on the opportunities and the spaces and the galleries you can attend, but you also like get out there, go, to the neighborhood, go like see, the people, the cultures, go experience the food. I feel like that'll probably give a lot of way to inspiration and opportunities for yourself than even the art world and the art spaces in these cities could even provide. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I agree. I agree. All right. Yeah, I think we've went through these questions, and yeah, I think we can end it here. Um Thank you for doing this. It's been lovely to hear about your work and hear about the stories about your work. And yeah, and we'll see more. Hopefully we will see more soon, you know? Um, and yeah, thank you to everyone who's joined the call. Um, we'll be having more, the archive will be having more conversations. So this is the beginning of I would like to say like a series of conversations. So some will be online, some will be physical, and yeah, yeah. So cool.
Here. Thank you for having me. Thank you to you for wanting to include my work within this archive. Thank you to Emily and RCA Black for hosting this fellow and putting everything together as well. It's been a pleasure to get to have this conversation about my practice and my work and get everybody's questions and have like such a thoughtful and in-depth conversation about it. So yes, I'm grateful.
Yeah, man, it's been lovely to have you. All right. Okay, so I'll see you soon. Um, it's in a bit. Bye.